Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Amelia Marker helps people lower their toxic chemical body burden so that they can improve their health and wellness goals, including trying to conceive. And many of our followers struggle with fertility issues and doing everything they can to increase their chances of conception. And achieving this important goal can become a full-time job for many and may even start overtake a person's identity. As a result, when they achieve success and have a baby, it can become, easy for parents to neglect their own health in favor of their family's needs. This can be harmful for parents' health and also have negative implications on their kids. This is why we're so glad today to be joined by Shelley Kemmerer with us. And Shelley is a certified physician assistant, parent and caregiver, and a burnout strategist. So we're going to discuss the importance of prioritizing your health as a parent and ways to tend your mental health needs. So I saw. Oh, here.
Hi.
Hello, hi, Shelley.
Hi there. How are you, Jenna?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
This is a topic that's so important, and I think it's so prevalent that we just haven't really talked about. Um, Before we start, please tell us a little bit about your background and how you became an expert in parental burnout.
Sure, I'm happy to. So my name is Shelley. I am the founder of Rental Mom. And thank you again for having me here. So originally, when I founded my business, it started back in 2020. And as we all know, 2020 was the beginning of the pandemic. So originally what I wanted to do is focus more on some of the prevention stages of, preparing for a baby, whether that be, the anatomy and physiology, like the changes that occur, how your household's going to change, scheduling appointments, things like that. So originally it was a very different idea and concept that I had for my business. Shortly after that, the pandemic hit and the writing was on the wall for me. So essentially I started seeing people saying, now I'm responsible for the household stuff and the school work related stuff. And now I'm supposed to juggle a job. Stay-at-home parents, they say that they're working parents as well because they're always on the clock. And so I started thinking about it from that perspective of how can we help these parents and caregivers who are constantly on and dealing with dual role collision, and what can we do to better support them and to get them resources. So that's kind of how things started shifting.
So how do you describe what's a parent and caregiver burnout strategist?
Yeah, so I focus on developing strategies to essentially prevent burnout based on like knowledge and training. So as you mentioned before, I am certified in parental burnout. I got that certification from the Institute for Parental Burnout from two of the biggest researchers in parental burnout, and that's stationed in Belgium. So I did everything virtually because that's essentially where everything kind of lives. So that's one of the things. And then I spent a lot of time kind of crowdsourcing information, finding out what parents truly need, because I think there's so much content online that already exists as far as self-care and setting boundaries, things like this. And so we kind of need to simplify and also strategize based on a person's situation, their family. To say to a parent, you have to practice self-care. I don't know that they necessarily don't want to practice the self-care. Maybe they don't have the time to dedicate to that. So we kind of have to go down to basics to figure out like what does their schedule actually look like? Do they have support at home? Is it work and outside of the home, work outside of the home, and the parenting that kind of collide? And so that's how I strategize. I have to look at everything in almost like a custom situation.
I also find it interesting that you mentioned, you did all your training in Belgium, and I felt like in Europe, Europeans pay so much more attention on, parental leave, paternal and maternity leave, and also family support much more than in the US.
So I just want to comment, like, I'm so glad that you're bringing this knowledge back home, that this is so much needed and that also needs to be talked about. And then people need to have the strategies to address these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that kind of surprises me even now is we've had all this discussion over the past 3 years and stating, this is what families are asking for. This is what parents are looking for, whether that be like work related flexibility, having different hours or maybe a more stable schedule, having childcare related support, wraparound care, affordability, accessibility, things like that. Like we've been talking about these things for seems like a long time now, right? And so you think these would be the top priority. On the other hand, other countries, like they have different support systems in place that they're not, struggling to organize when this stuff is occurring. And so I think even when I learned more about the Institute for Parental Burnout and I started kind of researching what parental burnout actually is and how it impacts people, it just kind of led me on a different path to getting into more advocacy work because change isn't going to come unless all of us collectively put those words out there.
Absolutely.
This is what we need right now.
Absolutely. Now we're talking about burnout. Like, tell us, what is the burnout?
Yeah, sure. So I can describe I'll go through like the general definition of it. Of course, there's occupational burnout and there's parental burnout. So with parental burnout, we're thinking about like emotional, physical, mental exhaustion due to prolonged chronic stress that is not supported with like other resources. So you're thinking of it from a parental lens. So detaching from your child or children, like feeling emotionally detached from your child or children, not experiencing as much joy in these, like in your parental role. It's typically combined with, this lack of resource, maybe community support, maybe it does have to do more with childcare, maybe it is partner related or not. I mean, obviously single parents can experience it too. And then you just think about like this bone deep exhaustion that I mentioned, and seeing like yourself as the parent that you maybe were before versus the one that you are now. So there's that stark contrast between that which you were and seeing yourself now and saying like, I just, I feel ineffective in my role. I'm not, the best parent that I could be. So those are some of the kind of common characteristics. And then, I think once you start feeling that like ineffectiveness, that can kind of snowball and make you feel like you can't really rebound from it, that things are always going to be this way. And I want to leave people here with being hopeful and that things can change once you do get the resources in place and have the support systems in place and find these pockets of time that you're able to do more self-investment, things can change.
So you mentioned a few things that could contribute to parental burnout. One is, partner relationships, and one is, chronic stress.
Yes.
What other factors can also contribute to burnout? What are the things people need to look out for?
Well, definitely, as you mentioned, like the lack of support. So this can be partner support, social support. I talk a lot about community on my platform, just in general, having local support. Childcare, that's another concern. Perfectionism. I think a lot of people talk about parenting perfectionism as being a source of, like a contributing factor, and thinking that everything that you see on a social media feed is actually occurring. I mean, we know that they're curated, like social media is curated. We're seeing a lot more raw content on social media, like honest truths about parenthood and things like that. And I think that definitely helps with kind of having a more realistic sense of what parenthood can and cannot be, right? Financial situation, that could be a contributor. So there's a lot of instability right now for a lot of people worrying about losing their jobs. I'm right here in the Seattle area, so tech is everywhere.
Same as,
and as you,
San Francisco.
Exactly. So, like with a lot of layoffs, parents have to worry about how the financial component is also going to impact the family. And then, like certain physical conditions, let's say that your child maybe has certain needs that require, additional care, that can be a potential stressor. Trying to think of what else. I think those are kind of the main ones. And like I mentioned, dual role collision, like having too much that you're taking on with your employment versus your parental role, and those kind of colliding and creating more work.
Yeah, so we know like burnout is like one of the really important contributing factor that can impact a person's mental health. And you had like a really interesting post recently that you mentioned 7.2% of children have at least one caregiver with poor mental health.
Yeah.
So this might sound like kind of low number, but it's still like millions, like lots of kids.
Yes.
So why do you think so many parents are struggling with mental health?
So I think there's a number of reasons, and it's probably a combination of things and not like one thing specifically. So I think for one, healthcare is really expensive. So if we think about the price of, let's say, medications, I could think of one right off the top of my head, an ADHD medication that can cost anywhere from $300 to $500, or availability of medication. We think about health insurance being a complicating factor. I actually wrote this down. So in the US, there's an estimated 350 individuals for every one mental health provider. And that is a statistic from Mental Health America. That's a very recent statistic. So not to mention that, but like having a healthcare provider following your care. So there's a lot of like compounding factors here that kind of come into play, and it makes it more difficult for parents to either have treatment for themselves, treatment for their children, just family health in general. So, gosh, there's so many things I can like rattle off. Over half, I think it's 54.7% of adults with a mental illness receive no treatment. That's another one from Mental Health America. Over 28 million individuals experiencing a mental illness are going untreated. So when we think about all these things, the cost of care is a barrier, not having enough access to providers. If you're going virtual, it's a lot. It compounds, right? So
yeah, do you think many people are also just unaware that they're struggling with some mental health issues?
Yes and no. I think that's another thing that could be kind of confusing, especially with social media, because I think we do a lot of, and I'm going to use air quotes, like diagnosing on social media, which is not what we should be using it for. Obviously, social media is not medical or therapeutic advice, but I think sometimes people might see a message on social media and think, I might have this or I don't have this because this is what this person said. So, whether they're unaware or not, I think sometimes people could be misguided by some of the information that is offered on social media. Honestly, I wish everybody had access to a therapist. I feel like everybody should be granted that. And yeah, and affordable access. I think for those who are unaware, I think it is the responsibility of the healthcare profession to really educate people in talking about some of the signs and symptoms, not only for parents, but also partners and children. And I am hopeful that, there are a lot of accounts that define it properly and cite their resources as they should. But that hopefully parents are starting to have more of these conversations so that they do have a concern, they can bring it up.
This might be a little stereotypical, but do you think sometimes it's harder for males to identify their own mental health needs?
I'm sure. And yes, I saw Scott pop in here real quick. Scott is a mental health advocate, and he does a lot of work specifically for dads. And I know because I've spoken with him and other fathers who, yes, it can be harder. I think there is a stigma there for fathers have to be the breadwinner. They have to be stoic. They have to, and I say fathers because you mentioned males, but like this is that stereotypical kind of messaging that we hear, sometimes making it more difficult for fathers and males to come forward to say, yes, I am struggling and I do need that support. especially when the messaging online, a lot of the times that we see in this like parenting circle is negative. And
Yeah.
so I I do think that that can be a barrier to them getting care.
And now we know that, when parents are not attending their own needs, that could actually have a negative impact on the kids unknowingly. Like how could that happen?
Well, there's some subtle ways and there's some more, I guess, severe ways that that can occur. So if parents aren't tending to their own needs and they've reached the point of exhaustion or burnout, let's say, they are feeling burnt out. The more extreme end of parental burnout is neglect. So we want to intervene, or we want to be on the prevention side, or at least that's kind of like prevention versus constant symptom treatment. And so when parents are kind of struggling with this and they're not meeting their needs, their child then may or may not have their needs met emotionally. So there is a difference there that I want to be very clear about, that there can be like the subtle signs, and then the more severe is like you're actually neglecting the care of your child. And this is why this is such an important topic.
Yeah. But you're offering solutions, which I want to ask more. You have a platform that helps parents to work through some of their emotions. So tell us about the Parent Suitcase.
Oh, sure. So Parent Suitcase, when I initially started that, I started thinking about like how can we, I guess, get more resources for parents kind of throughout all stages of parenthood. And now it's kind of shifting into more nervous system health, because I think once people understand kind of the reactionary sides that we might have, or the like emotional attachments and ways that we can kind of communicate better with our children, and know when we need to kind of take a break ourselves, we need to understand some of that physiology and how all of that kind of comes together. So yeah, Parent Suitcase, that's a part of it. And I'm not sure in what direction that's going to go. I think it is going to be more focused on nervous system health, because that is such an important factor, and understanding kind of our behavioral physiology, if you will. The other thing is like focusing on Run Tell Mom. I'm getting a lot more into parental advocacy. I think that's one of the most important things in my line of work right now, is being able to be a voice for other parents who are saying, hey, we need additional support, we need more resources. This is what people are telling me, and me working on that and doing that research and being able to look into that and say, okay, well, if this is what we need, where do we need to go to get it? Because obviously I can't be the only one. I know there's other people that do work in burnout, but it has to come from more of an institution, or like from a government level. And so that's really one of the things that I've been focusing on. And then of course, like the strategies, putting together an e-workbook that's coming out soon.
So the Run Tell Mom blogs, mainly you covering or advocacy work?
For blog content or just on the platform? So mainly
both, because your Instagram handle is also Run Tell Mom, and then
Yes.
you also have a blog that's Run Tell Mom.
Oh, yes. So on my website, I'm going to start my mini blogging, which is going to be like pretty short, sweet, either strategies or things I've learned recently, or, responding maybe to something that I read in the news. I'm going to be putting content on there. And then as I've been putting out on the platform, sometimes I like sharing other resources. I'll do it for like a week or two. I think that's a great way to kind of expand the community, because I think social media so the time is me, like we need to do engagement so our account grows, but that just becomes so robotic and it's not very authentic. And I have to get out of those things too, those ruts sometimes. I'm like, hey, we need to use this truly for community, because there's so many amazing people that are on these platforms, and creating those connections is just another way of saying, we need to band together to be able to make the environment for parents and families better here in the United States. So yeah, I do some of that too on Run Tell Mom. And yeah, that's me. And
how we got connected with you.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I appreciate it. I think I'm so glad that you're talking about this, because obviously parents in earlier stages, of conception. This is a component of it. I say a lot.
Absolutely.
Burnout prevention is a component of family planning, or at least I believe it should be. So earlier the better to start.
Absolutely. You also have many some burnout programs. So tell us about some of your services.
Sure. So I do some, comprehensive task planning for households. I was doing some one-on-one, but I'm kind of shifting that to more of group practice, because I think it's just easier to speak to, a bunch of people instead of doing one-on-one. I feel like I'll run out of, I'll need to multiply myself, because there are a lot of people that need the support, and I want to be able to do it. And that's another reason why I shifted into the e-workbook, creation. And that'll be anywhere from, I'm editing down now like 20 to 30 pages. I'm keeping it short and sweet. It's not going to be a big, long, huge book, and it's going to be very actionable. So parents can kind of go through it and go back to it and say, like, maybe at this stage, this is where I am now, and this is what I need help with. And at a later stage where I'm dealing with this at work, this is what I can do. And these are the tools that I can use. So that's the big push right now.
That is amazing. Yes, we do need multiple of you.
Yeah. I
so
appreciate that. No,
do.
that's really kind. Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge and then for what you do. We're gonna keep following you and maybe have another follow-up, because I think we should go even deeper into some of the strategies, particularly maybe for new parents. I think that would be a really awesome one for people to hear, especially a lot of our audience are trying to conceive or already pregnant kind of population, and it'll be really good for them to know some practical strategies.
Sure. That would be great. That's one of the things that I kind of looked at first when I founded my business, is what do we need to do in the very earlier stages versus now with burnout. I'm thinking you have maybe some toddlers or teens running around, and this is kind of what has been festering. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about that.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then thank you everyone for joining us. Be sure to follow Shelley at Run Tell Mom. Check out the blog, the Parent Suitcase, and then also the group sessions.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jenna. You take good
care. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.